All right, let's get started. Hi, I'm Mary Ann Shuko. I am a co-founder of AlzAuthors and a manager. Welcome to this presentation of AlzAuthors Live, Dementia with Difficult People. This is something I've been planning for like all year long. I just thought it would be such a great topic. And here we are finally in November. So we are the global community of authors who write about Alzheimer's and dementia from personal experience to light the way for others. If you're not familiar with us, we have over 300 authors in our organization and more than 300 books, as well as blogs, podcasts, film, and other resources. You can find us all over social media, and we're here to help guide people on their dementia journey. So I'd like to introduce some of the members from our management team who are with us today. If you just want to wave, we have two speakers, Susan Landis and Vicky Tapia. Ann Campanella is with us, and Jean Lee, who is a co-founder as well. This event is being recorded, so it'll be posted to our YouTube channel, and also I will add it to our podcast, so you can share it or listen to it again or watch it if you want to replay, and that'll be hopefully within the next few weeks. All participants should be muted. And if you would like to speak or ask a question, please write something in the chat box or raise your hand, and we will try to fit you in. Also in the chat box, if you'd like, you could write where you're from, because we kind of like to see where everybody comes from. We are a global organization. And if you did not register for the event previously and you just joined in with the link, if you could send me your email address, I will add you to the mailing list so that you can get the notes at the end. Okay, I want to introduce our panelists. First is Vicky Tapia. She is a co-founder and manager of AlzAuthors and a member of the board of directors. She is the author of Somebody Stole My Iron, a family memoir of dementia, which chronicles her story of caring for both parents with dementia at the same time, without the support of her brother. She, for most of her life, spent her time working with lactating mothers and babies, and turned to the opposite end of life when her parents became ill. She also serves as treasurer of our organization. She's an acquisitions editor and all-around asset at AlzAuthors. So Vicky does it all. Susan Landis is also a member of our board of directors and the management team. She's the author of two books, In Search of Rainbows, A Daughter's Story of Loss, Hope, and Redemption, where she writes about the gifts she found while caring for her mother, with whom she had a tumultuous relationship. She later penned Optimal Caregiving, a guide for managing senior health and well-being. She is a certified nutritionist and a certified senior advocate, studies that she took up when she became her father's caregiver, which she is currently doing now. She is the artist on our team and responsible for creating all of the beautiful images that you see on our social media. And she manages the distribution of our custom caregiver collections. Barbara Ella Milton Jr. is the author of Heeding the Caregiver Call, the story of Barbara Ella Milton Sr. and Alzheimer's disease, which tells her story of caring for her estranged mother when she was diagnosed with Alzheimer's, while she herself endured treatment for bladder cancer. She is a clinical social worker, clinical supervisor, social work educator, child welfare advocate, activist, social media producer, and resilience expert, and has been an impactful social change agent for the wellness of at-risk youth and families for decades. She's also written several other books along those lines. Malia Klein is the author of Sisterly Shove, a memoir that tells the story of when she and her sister took on their parents' care despite their personal differences. She is the younger sister in the book. A copywriter who studied journalism at the University of North Carolina at Chapel Hill. She was formerly a writer-producer at a CBS affiliate TV station. She owns her own copywriting business and shares her word-obsessed perspectives in Malia Mania, a comedic grammar blog. Kim Best is the author of How to Live Forever, a guide to writing the final chapter of your life story. She's a speaker and trainer on conflict management, transitions, and difficult decisions, including end-of-life issues. She spent most of her career as a registered nurse in intensive care, trauma, and emergency medicine, where she cared for people in extreme need and gained valuable experience in the medical system. She's passionate about helping others resolve conflicts in a productive, non-litigious way and in finding the optimal solution to problems for all parties involved. So before we get to what this program is about, let me tell you what it's not about. We in no way mean to imply that people with dementia are difficult. We know dementia can strike anyone, regardless of their personal situation, and that if there are difficulties, they are often due to the disease and not to the nature of the person living with the disease. But sometimes families who have had years, decades, or lifelong struggles, differences, and even estrangements receive a dementia diagnosis, and the caring is made even more difficult due to these challenging relationships. That's what we're talking about today, the relationships and how they were repaired so that caregiving could take place. Okay, so let's get started. I first wanted to talk a little bit about heeding the call to care, what it was like when you learned that your parent had a dementia diagnosis and you had had a history of troubled relationship with them. How did you come to heed that call? How did you come to make the decision that you were going to become the caregiver for that person? I'd like to start with you, Barbara, because that is the title of your book, Heeding the Caregiver Call.
Yeah, thank you, Mary Ann. Thank you so much for everyone being here today. I know you have a lot of choices about how you can spend your time, and we're so grateful that you chose to spend it with us today for this next hour. Yeah, I wrote an entire book about the process of heeding the call for my mother's care. My background with my mother was fraught with abuse and neglect, abandonment. I didn't live with her for the first 9 years of my life, and she was a teenage parent. She had me at the age of 14, and I suspect that the circumstances around my conception were not loving kindness and consensual. So the very notion of my existence was traumatic to my mother. And of course, I understood this as I went on to study trauma and social work and clinical social work and psychology. I didn't know that as a child, and I certainly didn't know it through my adolescent years, which were the place we got stuck at, my mother and I. We were stuck at power struggles. It was a very contentious relationship. And it was a relationship characterized by me sort of relating to her at holidays and funerals and weddings and things like that. But the times in between were fraught with lots of anger and ongoing abuse, verbal abuse primarily, and neglect. So that's the backdrop of my relationship with my mom. And so when I got this phone call, and she's a fiercely independent person, she's a fiercely resilient person as well, having survived her own upbringing of abject poverty, racism. She's a lesbian woman, so she had a lot of persecution, both in the church and in her family and in the community, including police brutality as a lesbian woman. So she's got her own trauma background that made sense for her behavior, actually. But what happened was in the fall of 2015, I received a call from my mom, and she said, you got to come down here. Something's not right. Something's wrong with me. You got to come down here. And that was very uncharacteristic for my mother to call on anyone for any kind of help, and let alone her daughter, and to save her face and her pride. And but she made that call. And I live 90 minutes away in northern New Jersey, and she lives in South Jersey in Camden County. And I made the ride down with lots of trepidation. I'm like, I never heard her sound that way before. And when I walked into her home, it was in total disarray. And she's walking me from room to room saying, you know, I don't understand why this, you know, what is this thing here? And it was a telephone, and she didn't know what it was anymore. And she opened up her refrigerator door, and there was like garbage in the refrigerator. And she says, I don't know how that got there. Somebody comes here and puts garbage in my refrigerator. I mean, she was just a wreck, and piles of paper everywhere, and mail all over the place, mail in the bread box, mail everywhere, you know, and it was total disarray, and it was quite shocking and jarring to me. And in that moment, I faced an existential crisis. I'm an only child. I'm her only child. I asked myself three things. Could I, would I, or should I take on this obvious problem where she needed care? She could no longer potentially live on her own, and she was obviously not well. And so I said, could I do this? I was in the middle of bladder cancer treatment, chemo, procedures every 90 days to fight my bladder cancer. I'm still undergoing bladder cancer treatment today. And I asked myself, did I have the physical strength to even take this on? And I concluded I must. And then I asked myself, would I do it? Because she wasn't easy to deal with. She was very, very verbally abusive. And she was very, very stubborn. And she was very, I was afraid of her, to be honest with you, as I was as a child. But I had to answer that question, would I do it? Who else could do it? No one else could do it. I had to be the one that did it. And should I do it? Like, that's my Christian faith. My faith said I had to do it. I mean, I had to try to figure out a way to provide care to her, where I, you know, I had very little contact with her for years. Like, we just, like I said, on holidays, birthdays, things like that. And they were very measured experiences. And I stayed until I was hurt, because I was inevitably hurt. And then I would leave. That's the value of being an adult with my own life in northern New Jersey. I would go, withstand some of the barbs, withstand some of the blows, and then I would leave to the safety and sanctity of my own home with my loving wife. So you know, I had to barrel down on the should I question, and I said yes. And then the book I wrote talks about how I provided that care over the course of the 5 years that she lived. Alzheimer's took her quickly out of my life, and I'll share more on that at another time.
Okay, thank you. That's a really powerful story. Susan, can you share what you went through when you learned about your mom's dementia, and you were kind of had kind of a similar relationship with her?
Absolutely. My mother and I had, as far back as I can remember, have always had a very strained, difficult relationship. She had suffered from dementia, or I'm sorry, from depression and mental health issues. She was very cruel to me. She abandoned me, rejected me many, many times throughout my life. The funny thing about that was I had a younger brother, and he was almost 6 years younger than myself. And she treated him very well. She was very affectionate to him, which made it even harder when my mother, years down the road, developed Lewy body dementia and Parkinson's disease. And he refused to be a part of the caregiving process and left everything to me. When I was 16, I left home. I moved across the country, and I was all but estranged from my parents. We rarely saw each other, and we kept in touch mostly by phone calls, especially because of my dad. My dad and I shared a close relationship, and we still do. So when my brother completely, I thought he would be the one to go to their rescue, because he had always seemed to have a very stable relationship with my parents. I did not. So when he refused, it fell to me. I had to quit my job. I had to completely rearrange my life to take care of them. I felt that they were so vulnerable. How could I say no? I had every reason to justify walking away based on my past, but I couldn't do it. But it ended up being a blessing in my life, and one that I will never regret. The dementia changed my mother so much. She became softer, kinder. The walls came down for both of us. And we built a new relationship. And it was such a blessing at the end of her life because we were able to have a peaceful relationship. We found forgiveness and healing, and we ended up coming full circle. And that's something that was so inspirational to me. However, when she passed away, it was the abandonment issues came up and the rejection. I felt that she had, how could we have this beautiful relationship and then she dies? So anyway, that's why I wrote my book. It was part of my healing process, and I wanted to share that with everyone.
Okay, thank you so much, Susan. Vicki, can you share with us your relationship with your mom?
I think after listening to Susan and Barbara that my relationship was a piece of cake, although it didn't seem that way at the time. My mom has suffered from depression. I never knew which mom I was going to get, the one that would slap me at a moment's notice or expected perfection from me, or a loving mom. And it went back and forth. She started having odd behavior, and my dad was already ill with Parkinson's disease and the associated dementia. But I think that caring for him made her more anxious and more angry, and she did strange things, which I did not at the time have any clue what was going on. It went right over my head. She didn't recognize her granddaughter. She asked me what an egg beater was used for. She could not figure out her computer, although she'd been able to do it to a point before that. And I was like, what is going wrong here? But I was very kind of slow. But I finally, they lived about 2 hours away from me, and I encouraged them to move closer. Eventually they acquiesced and moved here, and it was only after they moved here and my dad went into memory care and my mom assisted living in the same building that she was finally diagnosed. By that point, I had wised up, and I was not surprised that she was diagnosed with moderate dementia. Her personality, like Susan's mom's personality, changed and became sweeter. My mom, no. She continued to be suspicious of everything. She accused me of many different things, stealing her money. She continued having depression and sleep disturbances. She would show up in the common area of the second place they lived with no clothes on, swearing. I mean, that wasn't my mom, but the disease had kind of taken over her life, I think. In the end, the last 4 months of her life, I don't know if this was conscious or unconscious, she just pretty much quit eating. And she became softer then, although sometimes she didn't know who I was. She was very much easier to be around for me. My dad, through the whole time period, was always very sweet. The dementia didn't change his personality either. So they both kept their personalities. I wish my mom's had changed, but oh well. I never thought about heeding the call. I just did what I needed to do. Tried to draw my brother into it. He was not cooperative. He said he preferred to remember them the way they were and that I could handle it. He's 15 years older than I am. So the little sister, I just knew it was what I needed to do. It was just the way it was. I didn't even think about it. I just did it. So.
Thank you, Vicki. Melita, can you share with us your story? It's a little different because you did it with your sister.
That's right. We wrote the book Sisterly Shove. We alternated chapters because we had such a totally different perspective on caregiving, on the way things were, the realities of it. So honestly, I wanted her to write off different chapters because she was more in the throes of the day-to-day caregiving. She took care of my father, who had dementia, single-handedly with no help for 7.5 years. And I thought she needed something. She needed some outlet. But the basic idea was, to me, she was the difficult person in our relationship. My father was fairly lovely. My mother, lovely. But my sister would say exactly the same thing about me, that I was the difficult person in the relationship. So, but basically the growing up, we didn't look like each other. We didn't think like each other. But until our parents got old and sick, those differences, we could sweep them under the rug. So the basic story is, after Duke Med School and residencies, she settled in a California beach town, and I stayed in our North Carolina hometown near our parents. It was easy to ignore this oil and water relationship we had for each other, because we were on opposite sides of the country, and mainly it was handled on the phone. But once our parents were not the parents and we became the parents, it fueled this bi-coastal battle in which sisterly love that we had always had became what I called sisterly shove. So I think that the difficulties I saw in her being a doctor, she could do everything better. I had stayed in our hometown, and I'd been with our parents for 2 decades and done what they needed to be done, to have done. And my brothers lived elsewhere and were largely uninvolved. So I sort of, in terms of heeding the call, I definitely heeded it when it was easy for 20 years. And I was right there. I was the one who stayed. But then when the problem became, my mother was diagnosed with pancreatic cancer, given 3 to 6 months to live. She was the caregiver for our father, who had dementia. So my sister just took over. I became ineffective, uncaring. I could never do anything as good as her. She was the protester. I was the private person. She was the virtuoso violinist, and I could barely play the piano. So, the fact that she really, really thought she was better at everything. She ended up taking my mom to California and doctoring her by herself. She made it about 5 months. Then I had my father with dementia and elder care, a memory care unit in North Carolina. She kidnapped him, or I called it elder napped him, in the night and took him to California, and proceeded to, create this clash that went on for 13 years. And anyway, I could enumerate the ways in which she was difficult. She was definitely knew more about medicine, knew more about everything. One thing that made her the most difficult, and this is the book has funny moments. It's just, it was insane. But she did not believe in adult incontinence products of any type. So as you can imagine, an elderly man who can't control his functions, you take him to a restaurant, you can imagine what kind of nuttiness ensues. So there are moments like that. But anyway, I would say on a day-to-day basis, that was the most difficult thing about her. If she had just, used adult diapers, things would have been so much better. But anyway, in a nutshell, that's the difficulty. And when I hear Barbara talk about her difficulty, and Susan and Vicki, again, it sounds ridiculous. And my book is, it sees the comedic, things that happened when you have somebody who's got dementia. So that's it. There's a lot more, but I'll stop now.
Wow. That is an incredible story.
Thanks for bringing up the trauma of my diaper stories with my mother.
Sorry, that was probably a bad thing to remind you of.
Yeah, I think we all have them. Oh,
Yeah.
boy.
I'm not
So-
alone.
You're not alone.
No, you're not alone. That's the whole purpose of this, to know that you are not alone. We have these 4 authors here today with us, but there are several others who have been in similar situations did not join us today, but it is very common for people to have to come to terms with a lifetime of turbulence and struggle to become a caregiver. And manage to overcome it and try to find, sometimes rainbows like Susan, or they find peace and live up to their own expectations of themselves. So I guess that's what it comes down to. Everybody here has had to make a reckoning with the past. Does anybody want to share any thoughts on that? Like maybe there was a moment when you just realized that you had put the differences aside for now, or maybe forever?
I think what was really like an aha moment for me was when I realized what I really wanted was my mother's forgiveness as well as my own. It was strange because everything that I did was based on my past, and I had to put that aside. And every decision I made had to come from a different place. It couldn't be from the way that she treated me, the way that I wanted to be loved by her and accepted by her. It was strange because I had to forgive her when she couldn't remember why I was even forgiving her. She had no idea what the past even was anymore. When it was constantly on my mind, everything I did was very measured, and I had to push through it every single time I made a decision, every time I came near her. It was always, I always had to be on my guard because I never knew what to expect.
Yeah, it was hard seeing my mom sick. I was always used to seeing her self-reliant and strong and persevering. Like she worked 3 jobs. If she wanted something, she didn't want to rely on welfare. Like she just had a tenacious personality around survival. And knowing how hard it was for her to make that call to me to say, I need help. I mean, that was jarring to me. It was quite jarring. And seeing her sick and reliant on me and other people was very hard for me to watch. She was as independent as she was stubborn, and so I kind of knew from the get-go that I was in a spiritual process. I had to employ spiritual solutions to this physical malady. This is the heaviest lift I've ever had to do in my life, to inherit her life in its totality. Every aspect of her life I had to take on, and I was not well, and I had to take it on. And I kind of understood the importance of empathy and compassion. That's what sort of kicked in for me, that I had to put myself in her shoes, and what would it feel like to be spiraling out of control, like to lose yourself, to lose your memories, to go through the angst of sundowning, to wake up in a place that's no longer familiar to you, that you lived in since 1982, and it was 2019, 2015, 2016. So that empathy was the pathway for me to let go of the past and to present sort of a leaning face of compassion, like the beginning, like practicing compassion and loving kindness with her, as Tara Brach would say, to practice loving kindness to her, because it didn't matter if I was right or wrong or fighting over the little things she would say, and I'd try to correct her. Like I had to abandon all that, because she was sick and she wasn't going to get well. She was just going to get sicker. And that was the pathway for me for empathy and compassion.
Thank you so much, Barbara. That was wonderful. Kim, you're sitting here taking this all in. Do you have any comments?
I do. I have plenty of them. First of all, I do want to thank Marianne and her team for what they do, for the work they do and the heart that they have for this work. It's just powerful.
Thank
I
you.
want to thank you all for being here, and the speakers. Oh my goodness. It's interesting. I think probably everyone here can find a piece of their story somewhere in your story. I know for some of you, I relate so very much to parts of the story that you've said. And then I was a caretaker for my dad for 10 years. Ultimately, of course, at the end of life, he got dementia. That wasn't his primary problem. And my brother and I walked my mom through her ending. And I know that caregiving it's an act of love, or it's an act of duty, or whatever motivates that. It's not easy. And the thing I hear all of you share is the insight, the empathy, the compassion, and maybe perhaps ultimately the forgiveness that helped you navigate through this. And all of you have kind of said directly or indirectly that though the process was hard, you got something out of it, like you grew in some way, or you were gifted in some way because of things you got back that you weren't expecting to get back sometimes, or maybe even just lessons learned, maybe just that you did more than you ever thought you could do. And I think that's just beautiful. I mean, it's just beautiful. My favorite definition of forgiveness is letting go of the hope that the past could be different. And I think that can be the hardest part when you're at the end of a journey and you have this history, whether it's good or challenging or turbulent, that in that moment there, that you know that the past will never be what you wanted it to be. And that this is the best that people could do. And not only for the person who died, and not only for yourself, but maybe also for the people who didn't show up to help you. So, Marianne, those are the thoughts that I had while listening to these beautiful stories. And I guess the last thing again would be the power of story. I mean, my book is called Writing This Final Chapter of Your Life Story, because I really believe that we're writing a story we don't maybe realize. For me, I choose to mitigate for regret. Like, I know I don't want to lay on my deathbed and wish I would have done something differently. So sometimes that means that's my motivation for leaning into the hard. But when you're a caregiver, you're also helping someone else write their story, you know? And we wanted to have the best ending for all of us, the family, the person dying, the caregivers as well. So if there's a way to navigate for that be the beacon of light that you see at the end of the journey, that can be what you're walking toward as you're walking through the hard stuff, maybe that's a little bit helpful.
Yeah, I like what you say, because it's the idea that things don't have to go on the way that they have, or, you know, not be the way that you want them to be, if you're willing to take some actions, make the changes, you know, work it through, because, you know, in the end, we do write the story, you know, whether we realize it or not. Our life is the story that we set forth in most cases. So we can change things and try to make it better, or more of what we want. And the idea that forgiveness is giving up the hope that the past would be different. You know, it is the past, and we can't change it. So we can change the future. Yeah. So most of everybody here went on their journey either alone, or had a sibling who was not really much of a partner, but the difficult person. What would you say to the participants here about how to build a support network that isn't family? What did you do? Did you have other people in your life that were helpful to you, relationship wise, friends, other family members, not someone you would think would be the most natural person to be your right hand? How did you manage with building your own support network? Vicky?
Well, there's only so much you can burden your children with. My children were part of my support network. They were all adults. And but I knew I had to spread my angst around, right? My husband was marvelous. It was a new marriage for me. We'd only been married a month when my mom was diagnosed officially. I mean, we probably knew, but he was there for me. I wouldn't have made it through without him. I had a friend whose mother was also going through the different stages of dementia, and she and I would talk with each other, and she gave me the idea of journaling. I think talking to my journal was one of the best things I did. I could come home from visiting and I could lay it all out, write it down. And as the words came out of my fingers into the computer, I could let go and relax a little bit from my anxiety over there, whatever had gone wrong or right that day for my visit. As I said, my mom was very unpredictable, and I was never quite sure what to expect, but I think finding a support group for some people is really helpful. And if you can't find one locally, finding one online, reaching out to other people that are in the same place. I think having someone to commiserate with is really, I think, absolutely necessary for us. It's not a burden you want to carry on your own. And if you don't have that family member, I mean, I tried with my family member who, at one point when I was moving my parents, not very far from where they were, but it became necessary to move them. And I called, because my mom would call 10 times a day, and she said, if you make me move, it'll kill me. I'm going to go jump off a bridge. If you make me move, I'll die. She would call, I'm truly, literally called 10 times a day. I just quit answering the phone after a time. But knowing, I think I lost what I was going to say.
He said you reached
when
out to your brother for the move.
Yes, I did. I said, I really need you to come help me with this move, the packing and just everything associated with it. He said, do you need money? I'll send you money. I was like, no, I need you. I need emotional help. Hello, I can't hear you. I think the phone has a bad connection. What he said to me. So I mean, I think it was at that point I realized there was no point in, it was at that point I realized he wasn't going to be there. So just to move on and find my solace in my written words and my husband, my friends. Yeah. So it is,
and that's
what
a
it
hard,
is.
yeah, and that's a hard decision to make, because you think that you have somebody that's there for you and lifelong, and you know, a child as well, you know, and has the same level of responsibility, and then they don't
Obviously, he
come
didn't feel
through.
that way. I mean,
No.
one of the crowning touches was, he said, if there's any money left over, I want you to have that in a document that's been notarized that I will get half. I think that was the part that pushed me over the edge.
Yeah.
Which I did. I mean, I had no reason not to, but it was really a little bit devastating to me that he couldn't trust that I would do the right thing. So.
Thanks, Vicky. What about you, Malia?
I would say that in hindsight, I guess my support system was mainly, my daughter was 8 when this whole thing started, and my husband was a tremendous support, as Vicky said. But my sister's daughter, it just, now that I think back on it, she as a teenager really rose to the occasion. I mean, she was a tremendous support when my father was living in their house. And she was an art student, so she drew these phenomenal drawings and plastered his room with them. So when he woke up and opened his eyes, he saw all this, some of it disturbing, but interesting artwork, at least to stimulate him mentally, you know, and he would say, oh, is that a wolf? Is that a whatever? And when I think back, she was a remarkable 16-year-old to have done that as a gift for her grandfather. So you never think about kids, especially teenagers, as being a huge support system, but she certainly was. And, you know, I admire her. She's mid-30s now, and I admire her to this day. She's truly a unique person, you know, to see this grandfather as something to be nurtured, even though he seemed like a kind of a broken man in a bed. Yeah, so that was cool.
Susan?
Well, my brother, kind of the same as Vicky, was pretty much non-existent. The thing that pushed me over the edge was when I confronted him and said, look, I need your help. I can't do this on my own. And he walked out the door, and on his way out the door, he said, you signed up for this. I didn't. And that was it. We're pretty much at odds. And I had always considered us having a pretty good, fairly close relationship, and that we were completely estranged after that. So I had my husband, both of my children were grown. They were no longer children. And I relied on them a lot. However, it's, you know, you can only tell them so much. They know what you're doing, but they don't really understand what you're doing. And sometimes they even questioned it. Well, your brother's not doing anything. Why are you doing it? You know, why are you doing it all? And I said, because who else will? Somebody has it. Both my parents at that point needed help, and he was just not going to be any part of it. So I relied heavily on both of my grown children and my husband. And I even found some online support groups that were very, very helpful. I met some people that to this day are very near and dear to my heart. And it was just felt so good to talk to somebody, anybody, even somebody in a waiting room at the doctor's office that was there with their parents. And sometimes we would even, just complete strangers, we would talk, and it felt so good to talk to somebody who understood. Yeah, it just, you know, your friends, you try to explain to them and they really have no idea what you're going through. They'll sit there and they'll shake their head and go, wow, really? But they don't get it. They don't understand. And it was very frustrating. And, you know, eventually I lost touch with a lot of my friends because I didn't have any time for them anymore. Our lives were so different. And it was really a painful transitional time, trying to be everything to everybody. And it really takes its toll.
Do you have your brother back now? I mean, are you guys?
You know, we still don't talk very much. Certainly
it's
more
not like it was
cordial.
before. Yeah.
We're more cordial, but we really still are not there. I don't know that we ever will be. I know that I can call him in an emergency situation, but he will not be there. I mean, just will not. I begged him.
I know that part.
I don't have time. I'm sorry, I'm busy. He always has an excuse, and I just gave up. The only thing that got me through this is that I finally, instead of being angry at him, I just accepted it. And I said, you know, this is my journey. This is obviously not his journey. This is my journey. And I had to look at it that way. And once I accepted it, I was at peace.
Yeah. Did he come visit them, Susan?
Pardon me?
Did he come visit them during this whole time period? Did he come and spend time with them?
Since we've moved here to Oklahoma, we've been here now just over a year. He has not come to visit, and he made no mention of it. So I really don't expect it. I know that he keeps in touch with my dad by phone.
Does he? While your mom was sick, did he come visit?
He did occasionally when he would have time.
Yeah.
But everything fell on me. My dad was he had a heart condition at that time, and we really had to watch his stress levels. So a lot of things I couldn't even tell my dad about. I just had to deal with them on my own, just to protect him whenever something happened to my mom. So, but yeah, acceptance, gratitude. Those two things are what really pulled me through. I just had to accept everything that was happening to me and feel gratitude for every little thing that went right. And that got me through it.
Do you have
Another, one
anything to
other,
add? What was that? Go ahead.
one other thing that I want to kind of give a nod to is when my father was in memory care, the people that worked there were fairly extraordinary in terms of their support. And that's hard. My sister did not see that at all. She saw them as incompetent, but I'll never forget when she took him away to California. He had lived there for 5 years, and I was his main visitor and main support. You know, I was sitting in there waiting for them to bring me his stuff and his pills and whatever. And another woman who was in the facility came up to me, saw me crying, put her arm around me and said, "It's going to be all right, dear. It's going to be all right." And this woman, didn't know who she was, where she was, why she was. And that human compassion that bubbled up from her just blew me away. So I've got to count the people there as support as well.
Yeah, and I'd like to join the chorus in thanking and recognizing my wife for being with me every step of the way. We were on the journey together. And from the time the call happened until my mom passed away in January of 2019. And I don't know what I would have done without her ongoing support, the foot massages at night after I made the journey down to Camden and back, the 4-hour drive, making and sharing all the decisions, the big decisions, so that I never felt alone. I also want to put a plug in for technology because at the time my mom was diagnosed, this wonderful thing happened in the technological world, which are two-way audio video cameras that you put an app on your phone and I can be in Hawaii, I could be in Puerto Rico, I could be in northern New Jersey, and I had eyes on my mother 24/7. And I chose to be the one during the surveillance. And like sometimes I'd, go on camera and I'd see her like struggling to put a shirt in through the right hole, the right sleeve arm, is at her head, and then I would ring a bell and she would know it was me on the camera. And I would start talking to her and I would say, "Mommy, you got to take this shirt off altogether and let me show you how to put the shirt on right." Or I use it to prompt her to take her medications, or I use it to walk her through making a bologna sandwich so she could eat. Or I would answer the door when someone is at the door. I could see cameras on the inside and outside, and I could see who was at the door, and I could see if we had a safety issue or not. So technology saved the day for me because oftentimes I was incapacitated and I was literally laying on my back because I was receiving infusions or I had just had procedures or whatnot. So I want to put a plug in for that. And in terms of my social work skills really came to bear on how to do community organizing, how to find resources in the community. And I fancied myself being a conductor of an orchestra. That's sort of what it felt like to me, of all the resources that I was able to cull together from my mother, both inside the family and outside the family, in terms of phone call monitoring, her niece coming in and caring for her when I couldn't be there, especially on the weekends. It offered me a tremendous respite from the day-to-day care. And then we ultimately had to start paying for care and identified a well-reviewed organization that provided nursing and home health aides and companions. And I spent a total of $50,000 on the care for my mother and the maintenance of her house and making sure the house was safe and things like this. So I don't recommend anyone doing that. And I think on the outset, one should investigate with an elder lawyer or something like that about ways to protect your assets, ways to protect your, your revenue, your money Because let me tell you something, I could use that 50 grand right now in my life, you know. But it was sort of par for the course. And, you know, if I had to go through it a second time, I would do things a lot differently. Some things differently, other things I would remain the same. But anyway, that was my experience about lining up family that was down in Texas. They became part of the phone brigade. The relatives that lived closer by, they would fill in when the aides called out, you know, because they always called out. Or they frequently called out, not always. And then so you had to have plan B ready. And a lot of times my mother's siblings filled in for that. And I was real blessed to have all the love and support that we had in getting us through that very difficult 5 years of caring for my mom.
Thank you. That's really helpful. Do we have any other tips that we might want to share with the participants or the future listeners? Kim, do you have any?
Yeah, I'd like to speak into this for a moment. So I'm really struck by all the stories again, and Malia talking about the person who, you know, hugged her, that was a stranger, and the word grace popped into my head, and well, that she was an angel, that person was an angel. But I found in caregiving that random beautiful things could happen, like right about the time you're ready to go off the despondent cliff. That were just beautiful, but you have to be looking for them. You have to be open to seeing them. And a friend of mine paraphrases this Buddha saying that, you know, in life there are 10,000 sorrows and 10,000 joys. The sorrows will find you. You must look for the joys. And I think when you're in this season, for your own sanity and maybe for just increasing your capacity to be the kind of caregiver you want, the gratitude and the joy looking that you all have talked about is priceless. Ironically, I was trying to think if I saw this on the AlzAuthors site, but I saw something on Twitter. I like to say that there are only 4 kinds of people in the world: those who have been caregivers, those who are currently caregivers, those who will be caregivers, and those who will need caregivers. That Rosalind Carter said that. And to the brothers who couldn't show up, or the family members that couldn't show up, you know, they're going to be there because we all end up there. I mean, in some capacity, we end up there. But I think about these big decisions, these critical decisions with families that are ones that back ourselves into a corner for the rest of our lives that we don't see the magnitude of, right? So, and what motivates the no. So I wonder why they couldn't show up. And the word fear popped into my head, right? But it doesn't change that you're abandoned in the moment that you need someone most. But there's a price to pay for both sides of that. You know what I'm saying? So while it looks like they got off at some point, I think there's a price you pay for not being there as well. So I do a lot of work with families who are trying to make difficult decisions, who are estranged in making those decisions around caregiving. And we all have a story we tell ourselves about why the other person is doing what they do. And there are so many stories it could be. The odds of us getting that right are slim to none. But not only that, there's always more than one story. So we can latch onto one thing that's the reason why things are sideways, but it's always more than that. And at the time and place you're ready or not to have that conversation, it is healing to know what that story really was, and where that person stands now. Because when we sit in a present and say, I know what this person's going to do or say, we're in the past, right? And I sometimes say that we're robbing them of an opportunity to get it right this time. They may say no or not show up. I mean, I think there is a point where we all say, I don't even want to bark up that tree anymore. But but we aren't the same people we were back then, and we learn, and sometimes our hardest lessons are from our biggest mistakes. So I just, the part of me that's a conflict manager thinks about the people who aren't here to say their story and just, you know, wants to hold space for, I wonder what that was.
I think something that you just said really struck me, Kim, and that's that I feel I gained something that he'll never have, and that's closure. I was there when my mom passed. I was there when my dad passed.
You gave me goosebumps. Like that just gave me goosebumps. Yeah.
Well, I mean, it was a beautiful experience. There's no other way to describe it.
Yeah.
And he'll never have that.
Mm-mm.
And I'm grateful that you talk so much about gratitude. Also, because once I pivoted to gratitude, there were like these fissures that opened up between my mom and I, and the woman that the mother I had longed for came shining through.
Oh,
Before she passed, while she still knew me, like she knew I was her daughter, and you know, that day in and day out, consistently standing up for her and being with her, and coming to see the joy in the moment and the compassion, meeting her there, finally ushered in the mother I wanted all my life. And I got to see that before she passed. And what a gift that was. What a blessing that was.
what a
Sure
gift.
was.
You know, the truth is there is no easy way to do this. This is not easy. And, but there is an easier way to do this. And maybe the grace in it doesn't come out so much until the end, though I really believe in those moments that give us just enough to keep going. But figuring out the next right step, right? Like he seems to, for my life, get me somewhere that I didn't even imagine I could go. So I think that just figuring out the next right step, even though the whole future looks big and scary and you want to plan for that. I also found in my life that the only thing that happens in the future is the things I haven't planned for. So, you know, just really focusing on the next right thing to do, you will get to a destination like these folks here where you sit back and say, I did well.
Thank you so much. It's beautiful. We did have a couple of questions from Herta Saunders. She asks, what for each of you would have helped most when you were caring for a person you loved, even though they were difficult? Did you ever or often have burnout, and did you get help or find ways to restore yourself? Do we have any comments on that? One or two?
Great question. I think self-care is the parallel process while you're giving care to someone else, is figuring out how to take care of yourself too at the same time. And for me, I had a prayer and meditation practice. I did deep breathing. I still took vacations. Like I just, you know, still took breaks and had respite from the act of caring, and had to entrust others to care for my mother in those moments and be okay with that. So self-care is a parallel process, and it's a necessary process. The support groups, like I said, the deep breathing in the moment when you're faced with like the combative nature of my mother. I had to like learn to breathe and learn not to retaliate, and to try to come from a heart, like lead with my heart. But leading with your heart all the time can lead to burnout and fatigue and compassion fatigue and all those things you read about. And there's, you know, plenty of resources available about how to do self-care. You need only Google self-care and for caregivers, and you'll get thousands of pages of things that you can do to take care of yourself in this process.
It's
It
so
was
important.
faith. My faith, I became very spiritual. I've always been, I mean, I've always had a Christian background, but for me, my faith was really my shining star through all of this. Which is why I called my book In Search of Rainbows, because that's exactly what I did. every day. And my faith, it just really pulled me through when those dark moments arrived, when I felt hopeless, when I wanted to just dive into self-pity. And I had to dig myself out literally. And there were times when it's like everybody that I wanted to talk to, they either didn't have time to listen to me, or if they were listening to me, they weren't hearing me. And it hurt. And of course, journaling, like Barbara said, self-care, it's huge. It's a must. It's so necessary. The journaling part, which later led to my book, really was something that saved me too. Between my faith and my journaling, it was just really part of taking care of myself.
I want to add something here about the, if I may, about these best practices for taking care of ourselves. The truth is also that when we're caregivers, we have moments of exhaustion, of resentment, of hurt, of anger. And sometimes we beat ourselves up about having those moments. They are normal, they are real, and it's okay. So, and we don't talk about them because then we somehow decided that we aren't supposed to have feelings like that. It's always just supposed to be love and giving. I feel like we need to talk about the hard because it's real. And if there's not shame attached and we can talk about it, I have families sometimes, the caregiver will say, this is just so hard, I want to quit. And the family's jumping down their throat because, oh, look at them feeling sorry, or whatever their story is. But the truth is we feel like that sometimes, and it's okay to say it. Like, it's okay to feel it. It will pass and you'll be on track again, back to the next right thing. So just don't beat yourself up when you're not the best version of yourself, because you can't be all the time, right? This is hard.
It is. Thank you so much, Kim. Barbara, Kathy had a question for you. She wants to know, what is the name of that camera? The camera you were talking about. Do you remember?
Oh, I actually don't remember, but I do remember I bought it at Best Buy. And they had a wide array of them. So I'm sure on Amazon, you just Google two-way audio video and you'll get products. I should say, look on Amazon Smile, because you want to make sure you're giving the support to AlzAuthors as well.
Exactly. Yes. You can sign up to be, make us your Amazon Smile charity, and we would get a portion of your purchases at no cost to you to kind of keep us going along. Okay, so thank you, everybody. I really think that this went well, and perhaps we'll have to do it again in the future. Sounds like such an important topic. So thank you, everyone, for attending this AlzAuthors Live event. This is the last one for this year. I'm going to send you a survey later on, little email, and if you could fill that out and let us know what you thought and if the program was helpful to you or any suggestions you might have, that will help us improve our events in the future. Next year, we're going to kick off our live programs in January with a writing workshop for caregivers from Laura Davis, who is the author of The Burning Light of Two Stars, with our partners at Kensington Senior Living. So looking forward to that. That's going to be like a 3-hour commitment of time, because you're going to be learning about writing and journaling and all of that, and doing some practice work as well. And Laura's a great teacher, so I recommend that. We'll post the details for that on our website and in our social media, and we will be emailing it to our followers. So if you want to be among the first to know about everything AlzAuthors, you can sign up to our weekly newsletter if you're not already on it. You can find it at alzauthors.com. After you go on the website for a few seconds, it'll pop up. You can sign up there and then check your inbox every week for our news, our latest author, the latest podcast, special events, our sales. We have a book sale starting tomorrow. It's our annual National Caregiver Appreciation Month book sale. All the books are discounted, paperbacks, ebooks, some are free. So it's a good opportunity for you to stock up on your caregiver books, or even purchase some gifts for a caregiver in your life that likes to read and needs support. So that starts tomorrow at midnight. And also be sure to visit our blog, the podcast, the bookstore, shop at alzauthors.com. And some people said they liked my sweatshirt. That's where that came from. Comes in a variety of colors, and I love it. I wear it all the time. So you'll find a lot more resources for your dementia journey at AlzAuthors. And we invite you to share your own dementia story in our 6-word memoir project. This is telling your story using just 6 words. So it sounds really challenging, but once you start thinking and writing, you'll figure it out real quick. And it's a good way to relieve yourself of some stress or angst. And you can find the details for that on our website as well. It's one of the blog posts. And the stories that are already submitted are remarkable. So I think you'll enjoy reading through them and seeing what other people are going through and writing about. And you'll find a lot of kinship there. You can follow us too on social media. We're on Facebook, Instagram, LinkedIn, and Twitter. We share a wealth of resources for your journey every day. And we want you to remember that you are not alone. One can sing a lonely song, but we chose to form a choir and create harmony. Thank you so much for being here, and we wish you the happiest holiday season.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you for
Thank you.
attending. Take care.
Thank you.